2.5% of total tax revenue. The time is now for robust regional coordination to bring about sustainable reforms. Financing is crucial to achieving the United Nations Sustainable Development Agenda 2030. Africa's annual financing gap to achieve the 2020 Sustainable Development Goals is around $200 billion. According to the 2015 report of the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa, some 50 billions illicitly leave the continent every year. With such a large sum of money leaving the continent every year, less resources are left for sustainable development and human development. It is our time for our governments to work collaboratively to start this lead. Inter-country collaboration is crucially important in the fight against this university, and hence critical importance of strengthening Africa. The Africa Initiative, launched by the Global Fund, along with its African members and other development partners, held its 11th meeting in 2022 in Nairobi, Kenya, during which the 4th edition of the Tax Transparency in Africa Progress Report was launched. This 4th edition of the report highlights the progress made on the 2 pillars of the initiative. 1, raising political awareness and commitment in Africa. And 2, developing capacities in African countries in tax transparency and exchange of information in 2021. The report highlights that EOI contributes to domestic resources mobilization efforts with 3 countries identified in $37.2 billion, USD 38.9 billion of additional tax as direct consequence of the President in 2021. Since the launch of the African Initiative in 2014, according to the report, EOI alone has enabled 9 African countries to identify over $233 billion, US $244 billion in additional revenue. This information underscores the critical importance of African countries to adopt and invest in EOI architectures and infrastructures aimed at unlocking the potential of tax transparency and tax exchange of information for African countries. We will not relent in building partnership with regional and international bodies aimed at building on our strength, improving on our weaknesses, capitalizing on opportunities, and building efficient shields against current and future threats. In order to implement our strategic objectives, we, through the help and support of our various governments and our international partners, need to develop an enabling environment in which our human, financial, and fiscal resources are appropriately allocated and deployed to help us attain sustainable excellence in the management of our countries. As we deliberate here in Liberia, we want to take this opportunity to acknowledge the immense contributions of all former and current leaders and all stakeholders of Africa, whose concerted and valuable inputs have helped to guide the institution over the years. Let me hereby take this opportunity to thank all of them for their invaluable works and services rendered to the institution and to Africa at large. I would like to particularly thank our development partner, GFC, for its long-standing support to Africa and to other regional parliamentary bodies such as WAPA, IPA, and SACOPA through technical, logistical, and human capacity development. I'm sure that with continuous collaborations with member states, our regional and international partners, the goals we have inspired here to accomplish with time translate into milestone of which we all can be proud. I want to leave you with the slogan, Africa will rise again. Thank you. Having therefore made these opening remarks, I'd like to officially declare this 4th general meeting and symposium open. Thank you.
Another round of applause for our chairman. Thank you very much. I would now at this point invite the protocol team to take us on as we begin to receive our guest of honor. Protocol team. I am a woman under authority, and so this is how we will proceed. I want to shortly invite to the podium the Honorable Tweah, who is the Minister of Finance for this great Republic of Liberia. Honorable Tweah was born in 1971 in Maryland County, Liberia, and he has quite a number of impeccable qualifications, including a degree from the University of Liberia in Economics and Mathematics, a master's degree in Economics from the US, from George Washington University, and has done sterling work across the continent and as well internationally. Ladies and gentlemen, Honorable Tweah.
I would invite you to introduce me everywhere I go now from now on. Wonderfully short introduction. Thank you. Your Excellency, Dr. George Weah, President of the Great Republic of Liberia, distinguished AfroPac delegates, Chairman and members of the Public Accounts Committee of the House and the Liberian Senate, members of the Cabinet, officials of government, members of the National Legislature, members of the press, ladies and gentlemen. Let me thank AfroPac for choosing Liberia as a venue for this important symposium. That choice could not have come at an optimal time, given where Liberia has come from in the last 3-4 years, and in the context of your conversation and your team. And I think this is an apt place to have this symposium in the presence of a wonderful president who has pretty much accomplished everything you have in your team. So my presentation on your team today is going to be like a resume of President Weah's achievement over the last 4 years. So, I mean, it couldn't be a better timing and a place to do this in front of the president. Thank you also for choosing me as Minister of Finance for being the keynote speaker here today. You know, when we talk about your team, which says comprehensive, collecting comprehensively, the chairman just spoke about the illicit financial flows, collecting all taxes comprehensively, borrowing wisely, spending effectively and efficiently, and then achieving robust public finance oversight. That is the whole gamut. I mean, any country that does that effectively is going to achieve growth, it's going to sustain investment. So this is it right here. This is the vision that AfroPac wants to foster across Africa, and I think it's good. But doing this thing before COVID and Ukraine, this was difficult. After COVID and Ukraine, it is a daunting challenge right now. So when you say how we sustain the recovery in the post-COVID, the post-Ukraine, it's hard to say post-Ukraine because the war is still going on. So I don't know English has a word for during, but it's kind of saying, but post-COVID is here, we're right. The world has been confronted by serious challenges. You know, the collapse of revenue has been happening all across our countries. Growth has collapsed. The IMF has reduced the growth outlook for the world from 6%, I think it's somewhere in the 2-3% range. Africa is going to struggle in the medium term. Africa has had a strong growth over the last 10 years. Now growth is going to be in the low 2 point across the sub-Saharan continent. So, and this is going to be serious. It's going to mean loss of jobs. It's going to be, more poverty across the continent. So, policy makers, presidents, legislators, PAC members, have to double down with this kind of challenge that we face. Rising price of fuel, oil, price of agricultural inputs, price of basic commodities like rice, beer, can cause a political problem in our country. Rice now staple food, and all of these things are placing pressure on the government. So the context globally across Africa are challenging in the context in which we're having. For Liberia, it's even more daunting. I mean, forget about COVID and Ukraine war. Liberia has had to go through a series of challenges. Since 2007, for example, obviously we had our war, devastated our country, but we bounced back from that. And in 2007, we were dealing with the financial crisis, the great financial crisis. After that, we went through the commodity collapse. Liberia is commodity dependent on the export of iron ore. So if the price of iron ore drops from $185 to $65, that's a revenue collapse immediately. This is what happened in Liberia beginning in 2011. So we suffer from great financial, we suffer from the collapsing rubber and oil price that happened beginning in 2011, and we suffer from Ebola. Now, the world knows a lot about pandemic. At the time Ebola hit, it was African or a Mano River Union issue. People could not travel to Mano River because of Ebola inflicted. Maybe COVID has sanitized Ebola a little bit. People now understand globally what pandemics mean. So it's not something that you stigmatize countries. But our countries in this region collapsed, and I don't think we have received the compensation for that collapse. So Liberia collapsed, negative GDP around 2 to 3%, and we are still recovering from that impact. Then we had the 2018 macroeconomic crisis coming from the withdrawal of aid and unwill and all of that. Liberia had to go through that. They put inflation to around 30% under the remarkable leadership of His Excellency here. Over a period of 1 year, he brought inflation down from 30% to now 8%, one of the lowest in the region. While he was dealing with that, obviously then COVID hit Liberia. And then wow, so how many crises can this one country take in a short span of time? All right, and then we have to keep going. And while we're dealing with COVID, Friday night between inflated Russia. So, oh my God, when is it going to stop from Liberia? Right. So we're in very difficult times. But despite these challenges, countries have had various ways to resolve the challenges. Liberia has fared a little better than many other countries relative to COVID. I mean, to be honest, 2020 was tough. 2021, we bounced back to a growth of 5%. We had, under COVID, we had the highest revenue mobilized in the history of Liberia in nominal terms. So we took Liberia revenue from 11 to around 13.5% because of that. Because of that, we had the greatest budget ever passed nominally in Liberia's history. All of this happening in the COVID period. Extraordinary leadership, fiscal discipline, and close eye to the president that this happened on you. But the story is different elsewhere, and we all know that. The story is different elsewhere. Now, growth in Liberia is going to be around 3%. It should have been 5% because of the persistence of the European crisis and the negative thing in the global outlook. Growth is going to be around 3% this year. So all of our countries are hurting from all of this. We're here in Liberia, we're subsidizing rice and fuel. The same story is happening in other countries. Fertilizer prices are going up, and countries have to subsidize them. I mean, that's very difficult. All right. So how do you deal with these challenges in the post-COVID era? Collect comprehensively. That's a wonderful thing. What does that mean? I mean, public finance is nothing if we cannot collect revenue. Stop. We cannot depend on aid. Liberia has been an aid-dependent country, one of the largest receivers of aid. But what we've now learned is that if you don't go to domestic revenue, the aid will go. The lesson we learned in 2018 was that, aid started to dry up. Partners started to remove funding, and then we're left with many of the same programs. So, for example, the president had agreed to put 2,000 health workers on the payroll who were paid by aid. Now, the sustainability of that was not taken into consideration. When he came to office, the partner said, the fund is dry. So you have to find $12 million of fiscal space to cover these people in an economy that was shrinking, right? So what that taught us is that, look, we need to double down. Under the new revenue mobilization strategy, we pushed very hard to raise domestic revenue. And this is the result that we got. Strong political will from the president, zero interference in the president. Let me be honest with you, this is the president who has has no influence on the revenue process, what they do and all of that. I can speak to that. Okay? So the legislative, the Speaker of the Republic, the LRA boss tells me, the Speaker has to comply with regulations. And sometimes the Speaker goes to his office and says, okay, I don't want to be in trouble with the tax law, I will pay my share. That remarkable political will show that the president and the legislature is contributing to the revenue house in Liberia. And this is what countries will have to do across the continent, because the numbers on tax collection are not too impressive on the continent. Tax to GDP ratio are pretty much a mix. Okay, they range from 6% in Nigeria to around 13% in Ghana and Cote d'Ivoire. They move up to 17% in Rwanda, and then they end up to 34% in Tunisia, Tanzania. So it's a pretty much mix there. 6% in Nigeria, we all know Nigeria will do better, can do better than 6% of GDP. Liberia is showing that we can do better from 11 to 13%. The average in sub-Saharan Africa is 16.5%. So technically, all countries want to be at 16.5 or above. So if you're below 16.5, means you are below the average in the class. So in the tax to GDP class in Africa, Liberia is still below, but we are making progress. The goal is to move to 16, 17%, even to 18%. How you going to get there is what some of the things we have to, we're concerned with. How do you get there? How do you mobilize fiscal across the countries, You will have to do a lot on, the political will. As I said, no interference in tax collection. Obviously, it has to be the norm across our countries. Politicians and legislators have to understand that we need to get all of the resources to come in. If we don't bring everything in, we need to end illicit financial flows. So the share of illicit financial flows, if our tax to GDP average in sub-Saharan Africa is 16, what the chairman just said, looking at his numbers, if we brought all of those on tax, the average should be around 30% of GDP or 25%. So we are missing significantly just on the illicit financial flow. How are we doubling down on that? All right? How are we using digitization, for example, to close the gap? How are we improving tax audits? How are we dealing with tax data weights? This is a big area. Multinationals come to our countries across Africa to do investment, and they claim that without giving them data weight, they cannot make the investment. So it's a very difficult position that countries are in. To grow jobs, you need investment. To do the investment, the bank does not want to pay tax on fuel. He does not want to pay road tax. He does not want to do many, many things. If you say no, you say, I don't bring the investment. And so you're sitting there thinking, wow, it's a difficult choice. Do we give it or do we not give it? What is the right balance of incentives? Liberia has one of the most generous incentives on the continent. Our concession, the whole definition of concession is to give things away. What we're not realizing going back is that, look, in the post-COVID era, we cannot continue to give away. The president has dictated that we have to ensure that we get our fair share from whoever is here. The speaker and the pro tem of the legislature are also on board. So what they have conditioned is we need an exhaustive review of our tax incentive regime, and that review is going on. This is what has to happen across Africa. So it's true that these companies have to have something on fuel, because the claim is that, if we're going a concentrator plan and you expect that we pay taxes on this quantum of fuel that we're using, Mr. Minister, Mr. President, Mr. Government, you have to say, let's not do it. Okay, so what is a fraction? And you can pay it off, because you can't just say you can't pay it off forever. But do you not pay for 3 years and then start paying after year 3? Those are the discussions we're in. And we're in those discussions right now in a negotiation with companies, in the review of concession, who have asked for new incentive after their incentive have expired. We are telling them to get your new incentive or extension, you need to pay the following. You will pay your fuel. Some people have said they don't want to pay road tax. We say you bring big machines in the country and you restore our road. You need to pay the road tax. So all of those conversations are happening, and this has to happen across the continent for us to move from an average of 16 to 18 or 19, because then the poverty reduction, the investment growth, the investment in education, which is critical, the investment in infrastructure, which is critical, will not happen unless we double down on that. So it's very good that today we're focusing on how we collect comprehensively. But the other focus is also on how we borrow, sustainably. We borrow wisely. There is a big issue right now. Africa has another debt crisis. In 2000s, we were all hearing about the hippie. Liberia got debt waiver. Liberia had around 900 billion of debt. It was waived in 2007, 2008. Many countries got debt waiver from 2009. Now the story is debt has risen again. So the problem with Africa is that, are we always going to be in the cyclical pattern where after a 10, 15-year period, we run into debt and then we go back to the IMF and the World Bank and begin to talk about debt resolution? Because the recent meeting that I was this was the subject. There are countries like Zambia that are in debt distress. Many countries, including Gambia, the good news is that in under leadership, debt in Liberia has even improved. Debt management has improved. Liberia has been upgraded from total risk of debt distress to moderate risk of debt distress. Thank you, Mr. President, for that leadership again on debt. But the story elsewhere is difficult. So the question is, in the post-pandemic era when interest rates are rising, because interest rates are going to go up. Remember, we are coming from a very low interest environment to the extent zero interest rate in the West. But imagine with zero interest rate, very low interest rate, African countries got into debt crisis. Now interest rates are high. What are we going to do? So the choice is, countries have a choice to borrow, to go to the market. Several countries, like Ghana, went to the market, they issued euro bonds, and they are not able to settle those right now, and they are defaulting. It's a tragedy when a country borrows to finance infrastructure, but it cannot pay it back, and it goes to the IMF for debt restructuring. It's not a good thing. It's almost like a man is making $1,000 at home, but his expenses for the month became $25,000. How do you live on a $1,000 budget and get a debt of $20,000? You have to eat, you have to have a shelter, so by the time we take those, you probably have enough to pay the debt. You are bankrupt. This is what's happening on the continent right now. But the good news, the thing is that African countries have to borrow for them to grow. That's the question we push at the IMF. It is not possible for countries to only rely on the concessional financing of the World Bank and the IMF and all of that. That means the growth trajectory of these countries is going to be very long. So Africa will require 40 years, 50 years to achieve what Latin America achieved in 10 years. Let me say this. Africa is where Latin America was 40 years ago. On a per capita GDP basis, where we stand in Africa today is where Latin America was 40 years ago. That's not a good story for Africa. To turn that around, if we continue to do infrastructure and capital financing at a slower pace because of debt sustainability concerns, your development trajectory will have to be negative. Many of us in this room will now see Africa's transformation. Our children, or their grandchildren may not see it at that pace. So many countries don't want to be stuck in that. They go to the market. So we can't wait. We need the infrastructure, and it's true. But when they go to the market 3-4 years later, then they come back again and say you're in debt crisis. How do we solve this one? It's a problem for development on the continent. Liberia has managed to be conservative, but Mr. President, I must say, and the IMF mission, at the same time, we're having a discussion with them beginning today on the IMF program 5th review. We will have to push, even though we've been moderate, we have to push for higher rates to increase the span of which we're able to do our especially our road infrastructure and our electricity infrastructure, our ports. We need more resources. So the story is that countries need to hunker down a little bit in the next 3-4 years because interest rates are high the World Bank and the IMF have to release more resources for countries. We made that case there, the World Bank president and the IMF managing director, that countries need more concessional financing. If you are saying interest rates going up and they can't go to the market, then they have to come to you. You're the only one. It's only the World Bank, the African Development Bank, and the multilateral bank that can give you concessional interest rate of 0.5%. The market is giving 2-3%. When we go for 3%, we are breaching the IMF limit. So where do we stand? I mean, it's a very tough decision that we have to make. So if we can't borrow, and the resources concessionally are low, then where do we stand? So it means all of us now in this room, across the continent, have to make tough choices on our investment portfolio and development program. So we have to borrow wisely. But I'm saying borrowing wisely means also you have longer time, you manage better, and then it brings us to your other point that you say you have to spend effectively and efficiently. So if countries are constrained, the only other choice they have is to sweat the envelope, sweat the dollar. You want to get $3 out of $1, that's the goal. Currently in Africa, we are getting 20 cents on $1 for value. So while we're looking for more resources for infrastructure, while we're looking for more resources for education, we are now spending these resources effectively. So it also means that if we achieve high efficiency frontier, then we can make up for the resource gap. And we have to, policymakers have to be serious about that. We need to spend 20% of our budget on education. Liberia just passed a new education policy for the next 5 years. We are currently, Liberia's been around 13-14%. So what we're saying is that we need to increase that to 20% over the next 5 years. That's around, the plan is around, Liberia needs to spend around $500 million from domestic revenue. So that's how. If we don't have that money, how can we make up for that on efficiency front? Maybe we are spending on programs that are not necessary, that are not making children effective readers or math students. Maybe we need to cut the number of subjects that we teach the children, 13 students. So children are learning music in 2nd grade. Do they need those? They need to be learning more math or something. So what is our efficiency mix? In road infrastructure, how much are we paying for 1 kilometer of road? $1 million, $1.3 million. Why do we have 700,000? Why is that high? We're calling on the World Bank and all of us to review all of these prices because we're losing a lot on the cost. We spent $400 million to restore a 100 million hydro in Liberia. 400 million, you know, 400 million, and 88 megawatt hydro. The finance minister of Brunei tells me I can give you 3 hydro for that cost. How do we get there? So all of us, whether it's government, it's development partners, have a responsibility to make sure that we bring the cost structure down to achieve more efficiency. So efficiency is not only about the cost, it's also about the type of programs that you have. It's about delays in programs also. We need to improve on that. The World Bank tells us, we are from the Africa Group 1 constituency country. There are 22 countries, Liberia, Rwanda, Botswana, Sierra Leone, Kenya, that are part of those countries. They say we have 25 billion that is sitting down in loans, either loans that have not been spent because of bureaucratic delays. So imagine, countries need money to build road, 25 billion is on the continent. It cannot be spent because the legislative parliament has not ratified. Because of the work external, you have to ratify on time, and then you have to do maybe a certain ministry has not done so, and the World Bank rules are themselves very complex also, they can be complex. So the World Bank and countries all have a part to play in why 25 billion is sitting when Africa needs it right now. So that was one of the points we pushed at just in the meeting, that we need to ensure that these resources come to the continent, because in the post-COVID era, we need more resources. We can't have these resources sitting and on an inefficiency basis. Then we have to improve oversight. That's the elephant in the room. You know, Mr. Chairman, you're the PhD chairman in the Senate, the PhD chairman in the House. We all have to work together to improve financial oversight. So we have to ask tough questions on oversight. All these things we're talking about. Revenue mobilization. Are we mobilizing revenue effectively? All right? What do we need to do? We have to ask the authority, how do we achieve, how do we go to 16%? Liberia right now, we're at 13.5, 14. We have to sustain that. To sustain that means we have to sustain no interference in tax collection. We have to do more tax audits. We have to broaden the tax base. We have to fight illicit financial flow. And thank you to the legislature. You passed a new anti-money laundering law framework that is tackling illicit financial flows in Liberia. We have in Liberia, we have the right policy mix. We now have the right political momentum and political will to tackle these things. The next 3, 4, 5 years in Liberia will see dramatic results. We're already seeing results now. Low inflation, lower deficit, successes on the IMF program. But somebody said your country should be on the billboard of the Island of the World Bank because you seem to be meeting everything. And that's where we're getting. Maybe that's why I was chosen to be the speaker in there. So we can continue to tell the success under the president that is now well known. We have made strides. We just passed a new anti-corruption law that is probably the strongest on the continent. That law says the president cannot dismiss any commissioner. That law does not exist anywhere else on the continent. For a commissioner to be dismissed under the new law, the Senate has to vote. So he has to be impeached, or she has to be impeached to remove the new LACC commissioner. That is revolutionary. That is how you fight illicit financial flow through a robust, strong policy instrument like that, the political will. So we're doing a lot of stuff, but we have to then tighten the oversight on all these areas from a legislative standpoint, the audit standpoint, the revenue, the public expenditure standpoint, and making sure that public resources are having value for money. And we have to ask very, very tough questions to ministers of finance who are spending, to line ministries and agencies who are negotiating contracts, to procurement committees. We have to ask them, why is it that the winner of this bid is paying this price when factually we can check that the price in Rwanda or in this country is not this? I mean, it's not just that you go through a transparent process and the procurement committee comes and says the cost of the hydro is 350 million, but we know the cost of the hydro is less than that in other countries. So why should Liberia have one cost and other countries have another cost? We need to ask these tough questions because these are scarce resources that can be redeployed to fighting poverty and doing. So to conclude on the way forward, I'll begin by saying that Africa is in a bind. In a post-pandemic era, resource flow to Africa are constrained. I told this to the president of the World Bank. He said we should speak frankly, and I said I'm going to challenge you. Africa is the only country that has not received resources that is not linked to investment planning or an economic reform. We are the only continent that has not received quote-unquote free resources for development. All other regions have. In 1950, the United States gave South Korea $2.5 billion United States dollars. In that same year, the World Bank gave all 90 countries $2.5 billion. South Korea received $2.5 billion. 150 countries received $2.5 billion. Who will have the advantage in 50 years? South Korea. That was what we call a geostrategic expenditure. So Africa is at a geostrategic disadvantage because it is not able to attract pension fund flows or large investments for geostrategic reasons in a way that Latin America, Asia, and other countries have attracted those resources. So to get out of your development, there's not going to be this fiscal largesse coming. If Africa is defined, for example, by the United States government on the US policy, say, look, Africa is geostrategically relevant for the United States. The Pentagon just issued the new strategy document of the United States government. Read that document. It sets the parameters for American defense strategy. We were looking to see whether Africa will be defined as a geostrategic continent. What that would mean is that you will see US pension funds flowing into Africa, okay, because of that geostrategic development. That will help close the large infrastructure gap we have. We need around $190 billion a year to close the infrastructure gap in Africa. You're not going to have that infrastructure, so you have to make do with your resources. You have to spend wisely, you have to borrow wisely, because there's going to be nobody coming to you like they went to South Korea or they went to Latin America to give free money. So your business climate has to be tight. That's what we're told. The bottom line is that we are on our own and we have to exert political leadership. African presidents, cite an example, President Weah, have to take the bull by the horn, swallow the bitter pill. President Weah upped wages by 1% of GDP, faced political protests, lost some elections, but today is being praised for that toughness. That's what African leaders have to do. You cannot be afraid of political consequences. The macroeconomic stability is at risk. You have to take the bull by the horn. Africa has to borrow wisely. We cannot over-borrow and overheat the economy and come back to debt distress. Then we reputationally are damaged because by the time we get back, you don't have credibility. Africa has to mobilize domestic revenue. Africa has to fight corruption through strong legislation. Anti-money laundering, illicit financial flow framework as passed in Liberia. African presidents, African leaders have to stand up for the continent to turn Africa around in the post-pandemic decade. Thank you.
Members of the 54th Legislature, members of the Cabinet, honorable members of the African Parliament, the committee and members on Africa Symposium, other members of government, special invitees, members of the Fourth Estate, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. At this time, I ask that we all rise as I welcome the President of the Republic of Liberia, His Excellency, Dr. George Weah, who will make a statement.
Thank you. You may have this seat. Members of the 54 legislation here present, acting dean and members of the cabinet, other officials of government here present, the Joint Public Accounts Committee of the 54 legislature, the current head of the African Organization of Public Accounts Committee, officers and members, delegates of the African Organization of Public Accounts Committee, members of the Fourth Estate, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. Good morning. Bonjour. Bon dia. I'm delighted to have been invited here today by the honorable members of the 54 legislature of the Republic of Liberia to attend the opening ceremony of this fourth general meeting of the African Organization of Public Accounts Committee, AFROPAC. On behalf of the government and people of Liberia, and in my own name, I would like to welcome all of the international delegates who have traveled to Liberia from all over the African continent to attend this very important meeting. I'm informed by the invitation letter that the African Organization of Public Accounts Committee, the AFROPAC, was founded almost a decade ago with a vision to to be the voice of all legislative and parliamentary public accounts committee on the African continent for the purpose of promoting transparency and accountability through a pan-African network of parliamentary committees dealing with state budgets and public accounts. The objective of creating a unified structure of public accounts committee across the African continent that are charged with the responsibility of legislative or parliamentary oversight of public expenditure is an important one which should give rise to opportunity to share knowledge and experiences and benchmark best practices through continental peer exchanges. This can only lead to increased prosperity for all of our citizens, as this tends to gain immense benefits from greater transparency and accountability in the management of public finances. Distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, let me say a special congratulations to the Joint Public Accounts Committee of the 54th Legislature of the Republic of Liberia for your selections and elevation as head of this important transcontinental body, and for the efforts you have made to serve as the host for this 4th General Meeting of Africa. I trust that your leadership will continue to justify the confidence that has been reposed in you by your colleagues and peers. Again, I would like to say congratulations to our keynote speaker, Honorable Samuel Tweah. I would also like to make a special mention of the late Senator Edward Dabosa of the 53rd and 54th Legislature of Liberia, who I made to understand was a passionate advocate for the formation of Africa. May his soul rest in perfect peace. Let me express the hope that your deliberations here will be fruitful and productive, and that your stay in our beautiful capital city of Monrovia will be pleasant and enjoyable. I wish you all the best in the deliberations, and God bless you all.
Your Excellency, thank you very much. When Honorable Samuel Tweah was delivering his very passionate and well-researched keynote, I could not help but begin to think that we could not have selected